member from Huron-Bruce.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Environment Minister. Speaker, no one believes the government's projections on cap and trade. We all know that the Liberals' cap and tax scheme will force Ontarians to pay much higher prices, much more than the Premier is willing to admit. Speaker, in fact, long-term projections show that Ontario families can expect to pay nearly $900 more every year just for gasoline and home heating alone. This Liberal scheme is just another example of how this government is making life more unaffordable for all Ontarians. The minister had the chance to come clean, Speaker, with Ontarians last Thursday, but he chose not to. Speaker, why won't this minister tell the truth and finally reveal the true cost of the Liberals' tax?
Question. Thank you. Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. It's very fascinating watching the opposition on this. They have no position on climate change.
No.
They won't acknowledge that over half of the global GDP, half of the world's economy right now has a carbon price. They won't acknowledge that right now in British Columbia and in Quebec, the cost of living is going up at a slower rate than any other province and the Canadian average since they were the first to introduce a carbon. They won't acknowledge those simple facts, Mr. Speaker.
They just don't know.
So I'm trying to figure out what their position is. It's a mixture of climate deniers and climate ditherers. They sort of tell you they care about climate change, but when it comes to actually telling us what they're going to do, Mr. Speaker, we're about to put $1.9 billion a year into people's heating systems, their cooling systems, their cars and their public transit to lower their cost of living. What is the opposition going to do, Mr. Speaker, other than dither?
Thank you. Supplementary.
I can tell you what the opposition is going to do, Speaker. We're going to put these guys to the door in 2018, and we're going to tell the truth. Again, back to the minister. By next year alone, the government's own numbers show that each household in the province can at least grow nearly $400 more every year. And again, that's just for gas and home heating. And that still doesn't account for the long-term cost impact on families, which could more than double that number. Speaker, the truth is the government's cap and tax scheme will increase the cost on everything. And what's it going to do? It will leave families who are already struggling to make ends meet with much higher prices for everyday essentials like groceries. Speaker, why won't this minister finally admit that this government's real motive for cap and trade is to pay for years of Liberal scandal and mismanagement and not protect the environment?
Thank you. Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to ask the member from Huron-Bruce one more time. Why, if that is true, if her assumption, her fundamental assumption is true, why does Quebec and BC that have had a carbon price, BC is at twice the rate of Ontario's approximately, and they've had the lowest cost of living? Why, Mr. Speaker? Because they're only looking at one part of the balance sheet. They don't realize all of the efficiency this drives in the economy, that it overall lowers and slows the rate of growth and cost of living. And they don't look at the fact that we are about to make massive investments in people's vehicles, in their home heating cooling systems, in insulation, in public transit, that people will not have to use carbon-based fuels because we're going to switch. We're going to renovate and retrofit every building in Ontario.
Answer.
And the reason that, Mr. Speaker, the reason that they will not be thrown out in 2018.
Order.